Chapter 40. Michael sat alongside his siblings glumly as Uriel and Raphael snickered at his plight, while Gabriel only smiled happily. Quote. Stop laughing. Ha ha. Michael's words only made his fellow angels burst out laughing openly, making the former ruler of heaven sulk even more. All right, enough of that, Brother Uriel, Brother Raphael, we need to get back to the topic at hand before Brother Etherian is done upgrading the system again. The two archangels in question smirked at Gabriel's words. Fine, fine. Let's get to it. Gabriel put down the documents in front of her brothers according to her oldest brother's ideas, with Michael having the highest stack of documents out of all of them, making him sulk even more. Ignoring him, Gabriel started explaining the tasks that Etherian gave all the other archangels. Brother Uriel, you will be responsible for training the humans in the church in all its forms. How much success have you had in the tier magic that Brother Etherian taught us? Uriel grinned as he raised his hand and mobilized his newly gained mana, creating a blob of water without the need for chanting the spell name using silent magic. I have reached tier 7. Good. Then, you will be responsible for honing the skills of the humans in their combat prowess as well as their tier magic. Uriel nodded at his sister's words and took the documents in front of him, reading them to further confirm the plan laid out for him. Gabriel turned to Raphael. Brother Raphael, you are responsible for the shelters being constructed for the poor under the church's new shell company. How is the progress going? Pretty well. We have already opened doors in many of the cities in North America, Canada, Vatican City, the EU, and many other Western countries. The other countries and cities also have our shelters being constructed at the moment and should be ready in a few days. Gabriel nodded in satisfaction and turned to Michael, who had his head buried under the pile of documents in exhaustion and depression. Brother Michael, how are things on your end? Terrible. I thought I had finally escaped being responsible for maintaining the livelihood of our people after Brother Etherian stepped up, but I never thought that he would once again throw responsibilities my way. I want to protest. I want labor laws enacted in the heavens against unjust overworking. I demand my lawyer. Quote. Brother Etherian is right, you are reading far too much human fiction. Gabriel's words made Michael sulk even more, remembering how Etherian took away all of his manga and books and told him to concentrate on work. Sighing tiredly, Michael started talking about his side of things while still lying on the table. With a bit of stock market manipulation, a little bit of hypnosis and corporate espionage, the Seventh Heaven Inc. is looking at becoming a really successful company dealing in all kinds of consumer goods in the next few years. His words made Gabriel smile even brighter as she gave her own side of things. Then, I guess I won't have to worry about my side of things either if you can make enough money for it. When Etherian had left for his quest for the 4 relics along with Empyrean and the Cherubim gatekeepers, he had given out a task for all 4 archangels to begin establishing a firm foothold in human society and to steer it towards a better future. To that end, he assigned each angel tasks that perfectly suited them. Michael was put in charge of the private firm that Etherian established during his quest, the Seventh Heaven Inc. A company that dealt with all kinds of goods and was now starting to open its very first retail stores in the EU and, if all went to plan, would expand across the world. Its working principle was simple. The main company would work on R&D for every single consumer good in existence, with the clear goal of making affordable, yet durable, products that can be sold for cheap in their retail divisions that would deal in both individual scale and industrial scale. This way, Etherian was hoping to corner the market and make its company the ruler of the commerce segment. Once that plan succeeds, he also had a plan where the Seventh Heaven Inc. would expand into banking, entertainment, transportation, and every other industry in existence with the same goals. Cheap, efficient, durable, repairable, sustainable, and recyclable products across the board. For sectors like banking and entertainment, their main focus would be on quality services at the lowest possible price. This company would also start funding certain politicians and lobbyists that would be beneficial for humanity as a whole and the earth once they get going. This was the main reason why Michael felt like crying. Because all of this was handed over to him to handle, which made his workload the biggest out of all 4 archangels. As for Uriel, he would be responsible for handling the supernatural side of things in the human world. He is responsible for training the church's forces personally, along with many other angels, helping them refine their skills and abilities while also teaching them the tier magic system that Etherian gave them. Raphael, on the other hand, had the second highest workload out of the 4. He was responsible for operating the Global Human Welfare Group, a branch of Seventh Heaven Inc. Its job is to open homeless shelters, orphanages, free schooling, and reskilling institutes across the world. Its funds would be given to it by its parent company, which meant that there would be no outsider who would meddle in its business. The shelters and orphanages would take in the humans who had nowhere else to go and give them food, shelter, and clothing for as long as they needed. However, it would not be done for free. For the children, they would be obligated to study at the group's schools to make a future for themselves. For the homeless, they would be put into reskilling institutes where they would be taught skills and knowledge needed for any industry they choose, giving them the opportunity to carve out a life for themselves. Even those with disabilities and illnesses will be treated in hospitals that this group will own very soon. And those who are physically disabled will be given alternate opportunities to learn skills and gain jobs accordingly. However, the one ironclad rule that this group must follow is that no lazy people will be allowed to stay in their shelters. People who only want to laze around and use up the resources of the shelters without any desire to better their lives will not be tolerated. Gabriel, on the other hand, had the job which was both easy and tough at the same time. She will be responsible for the political side of things. Metatron, who was forcefully pulled back to work by threatening to take away all of his ninja merch and literature, would assist Gabriel in this task. These two, along with many of their subordinates, would be responsible for manipulating the political scene in every country where they could put down their footholds and make things go in a certain direction based on the choices available. But the main focus would always be to better the lives of the common people and facilitate the development of technologies and ideologies that would prove beneficial for humanity as a whole. The funding for all these political campaigns would obviously come from Michael's company, which meant more work for him. Again. Looking at her brother, who was on the verge of weeping as he read through the towering stack of documents, Gabriel smiled again. Just as the four angels were about to relax and talk about other things, they felt the heavenly system change again, and a new and stronger wave of holy energy and light accumulated within their bodies rapidly. Looks like Brother Etherian is done with his new modifications to the system. Uriel smirked at Raphael's words. Sucks to be the Beelzebub right now. Last I heard, he was working on studying the modifications done to the system to make changes to his own evil pieces. However, now that the system has changed again, he will have to start from scratch. Again. Uriel's words made the angels chuckle, but Gabriel pouted. That reminds me, Brother Michael and I have a meeting with the Satans next week to discuss some kind of treaty that they want to propose. Oh, that ought to be fun. Raphael shook his head at Uriel's words, knowing that he was itching to fight the devils ever since his strength was bolstered by the heavenly system and the new tier magic. However, he knew that it would not be wise to initiate a conflict. Given how the heavens are right now in terms of military force, there is no doubt that the heavens can hold its own, and even have an upper hand in any reenactment of the Great War in this era. However, the problem is that the human world cannot handle that kind of conflict. The loss of life would be too high to justify whatever goals the three factions could have in initiating such a war. So, it was advisable to have diplomatic talks rather than open conflict. Of course, it also depends on the other side on how things proceed, like with the many meetings that the heavens have had in the past month or two. Out of all the meetings, a few stood out to the angels in their memory. The surprisingly chill way the meeting with the Hindu pantheon went, with a non-aggression pact signed between them after the heavens agreed not to try and convert the Hindu people's beliefs into Christianity, and provided the Hindu pantheon with the basic mechanics of the heavenly system so that they can set up a similar system of their own. In exchange, the heavens gained an alliance with the Hindu pantheon, where they would support the heavens in any endeavor they would have the future, along with the promise of meshing whatever system they end up developing with the heavenly system, which would allow the heavenly system to share its burden with whatever new system the Hindus end up developing, while also gaining new types of magics and techniques that the Hindus would incorporate into their system, just like they would gain the techniques from the heavenly system. Of course, there will be some techniques, like the tier magic from the heavenly system, and whatever secret magics that the Hindus have, that would not be shared, but overall, this exchange of techniques, magics, energy, and protections would prove to be a great boon for all the humans who live in the territories of both factions. Vishnu even gave the heavens a personal minor divine artifact of his as a token of their promise and alliance, showing just how serious the Hindu pantheon was about this meeting. Similarly, the meeting with the Greek, Norse, and the Chinese pantheons went just as well, even though it was mostly just a non-aggression pact that was signed along with trading a few things and information to gain the permission to operate in each other's territories and gaining a promise from the three pantheons to not interfere with the heavenly system's efforts to safeguard the humans. The worst meeting, however, had to have been with the Shinto pantheon. The sheer arrogance and isolationist policies of Takamagahara hand pushed a few buttons in all the angels' minds. But the one who was the most enraged was Etherian. The way the Shinto were not even willing to entertain the thought of letting the heavenly system protect the humans and spoke as if the actions of the heavens were unnecessary, while humans died left and right in their lands at the hands of various rogue yokai and stray devils truly made Etherian see red. The four siblings do not know what Etherian did exactly after he invited Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi to a private chamber for talks. What they do know is that, after that talk, the Shinto gods have not left Takamagahara, nor have they tried to reach out to anyone else for any kind of talks or tried to interfere with their angels who were down in Japan. Even the yokai had disappeared completely from the mortal realms, holing up in their pocket dimensions in Kyoto and not venturing out for anything. The four angels chose to forget about those things since it was not the time to think about those incidents. As one, they stood up from their seats and headed towards the entrance of the seventh heaven. Now that their brother was done with the new changes, they were excited to hear about what kind of changes he had made this time around. Chapter 41. I felt my heart sink as Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael looked at my plans and gave me strange looks, as if seeing me for the first time. Brother, I am not trying to insult you or anything, but don't you think this plan has too many holes in it? Even for a rough draft. The innocent way Gabriel said that gave me the highest amount of damage, which made me hunch over a little bit. After making the latest patch to the system and sending over the relevant information to Azazel and pushing through the notifications to the human sacred gear wielders and the members of the church, who are the primary party who will be affected the most with this update, I brought my plan for humanity and the gates to my four eldest siblings, hoping to gain some kind of insight and help in refining this idea. However, given how they are all giving me strange looks, it is clear that they have found a lot of issues in the plans that I never even considered in the first place. Leaning back into my chair, I motioned the only female archangel to go ahead. Nodding at my gesture, she pointed out a few things in the idea that she found lacking. While the overall plan is okay, there are many issues that I think you should take care of before implementing this thought. The biggest of which is the mass casualties that will arise from this idea. I sighed at her thought. True. I have realized that there will definitely be casualties no matter what I do, and I am having a hard time coming up with a way to mitigate that issue. Any ideas? Gabriel nodded excitedly. Use the guardian angels to remove the casualties altogether. Okay, that's a good idea. I leaned forward at her words. Elaborate, please. We can use the guardian angels to protect their charges and pull them out of harm's way when the gates open, saving their lives, but still letting the gates instill the threat of death into them so that the humans can earnestly work to build their power. A sound idea, but one issue. Michael chimed in at Gabriel's suggestion. Not every human has a guardian angel with them, invisibly following them around all day. Right now, only those who have high karma are assigned guardian angels, and we are quickly running out of said category of angels with how many humans are being born every day with high karma. Not to mention how our guardian angels cannot reach humans in the territories of other pantheons, excluding the Hindu pantheon. Even if the Greeks, Norse, and Chinese can be tempted to allow our guardian angels into their territories to take care of this issue, it would still go back to the issue of not having enough angels. Not to mention that it is impossible to convince the Shinto and the Yoruba, who are extreme isolationists. Michael smiled as he spoke those words. A better solution, I think, is to roll out these gates in a controlled way. First, open a few in the territories we control, where the guardian angels can subtly protect their charges and make sure there are no human casualties. Then, as the humans become stronger and stronger from this region, the other humans from around the world would inevitably be drawn to this new power due to their inherent greed. This would mean that the other pantheons would have no choice but to allow us to do as we please unless they start losing the people in their territories as they flee to our own places in search of power and glory. I hummed at those words. While it is a sound plan, there is another issue I can see. This would create imbalance and suspicions in the other human countries if the gates are so isolated. Not to mention the possibility of war that could arise over the resources gained from within these gates, which I am planning on including to make it a more profitable venture for the humans. Sharing my concerns with the angels made them quite down as well, before Uriel spoke up. Why not make a private military belonging to your company? What use would that be? Uriel used his holy energy to start weaving illusions in the air to better explain his idea. We use the private military as security for your assets and locations. As your company expands, which it will since we want it everywhere in the world, we can put these security forces in those areas. Now, when the gates, randomly, open up across the world, the security forces could be used in tandem with the guardian angels to pull out the mortals and protect them from harm, which will make it so that there will be no casualties. Gabriel gave her brother a frown. But, what about the security personnel themselves? Won't they end up dying or getting injured in the process? Uriel smirked as he turned to look at me. The Annihilation Maker. That is the answer. I nearly shot up to my feet in shock as I heard his words. Genius. Why didn't I think of that? I still don't get it. I picked up from where Uriel left off since I got the gist of his idea. What Uriel is suggesting is that we use the Annihilation Maker, which I have already incorporated into the heavenly system, to create fake humans who have no souls or no true sapience, only programming to act a certain way, to act as the security personnel. This way, when the gates activate, the security personnel can die, protecting the humans, creating a greater impact and a sense of danger for the humans since these fake humans would be made from real flesh and blood through the use of the sacred gear. This way, there will be no casualties in the human race, but they will still have an immediate sense of crisis that will force them to seek power from within the gates to protect themselves. And since I plan to make the initial gates extremely weak, it will give the humans enough time and holy energy from the monsters within the gates to tackle the stronger gates that we will deploy later. Uriel nodded happily at my words, showing that I had correctly guessed his idea. This also gave me an idea on how to manipulate human society in the coming years and make sure that nothing that is detrimental to humanity takes place. Artificial humans created through Annihilation Maker, and then imbued with specific programming hard-coded into them to push forward certain agendas and ideologies. Physically, they will be no different from regular humans down to the cellular level, but in truth, they will be our pawns that we will use to control human society and drive them towards a better future. With this, I can take care of multiple issues with a single stroke. Raffle continued reading through the notes while I discussed this new idea with Michael and the feasibility of its application before he brought forward his own issues. Brother, how are you going to tackle the issue of society as a whole once the gates come into the scene? That is another issue I am having trouble with. I admitted without any hesitation as Raphael asked his question. Admittedly, there will be some serious repercussions in the human world once I enact this plan, even with the new plan I made on the spot with Uriel's suggestion as the basis. First, the problem of human casualties within the gates, or more specifically, murders that can be done within the gate, given the nature of humanity and how they always find a way to misuse the tools given to them. For starters, I already have a plan to limit entry into the gates according to the level of the humans, making it completely safe as long as they are careful. I have even gone as far as to copy the way the raiding games of the devils are set up, allowing the humans to forcefully be expelled from the gates when they are critically injured. However, what I know about human nature, it will be just a matter of time before powerful people get it into their heads that they can do anything without repercussions. I leaned back into my chair and spoke out the plan that I already thought of, but did not find it feasible. I was originally planning on enacting a government body that would oversee the awakened humans, with the heavens overseeing said body and making sure nothing goes wrong. However, given how our numbers will be spread thin as the days go by, I don't think it will be a feasible plan. True. Let's put that aside for now and look at the more technical aspects of the plan. First off, what options are you considering for generating the gates in the first place? I am thinking of using the system to generate the gates through the reality warping powers of the dimension gap energy. Alternatively, we can also incorporate dimension lost into the system to achieve a similar result. Both options have their pros and cons, so I am not sure which one to use. My original plan was to use the system itself to generate the gates, but after I incorporated Annihilation Maker into the system, I got the idea to get a few other sacred gears that could be of use in my plan, so I decided on getting Dimension Lost as well from its wielder before it was awakened. With the Dimension Lost's ability amplified by the energy of the system, it can create a gate anywhere in the world. Then, the system would take care of creating the scenery, background, and resources for the humans to harvest through the concept of creation that it already has with it. Then, it will use the Annihilation Maker to create the monsters filled with holy energy to fight the humans. Once these monsters are killed, the holy energy will be transferred to the humans to enhance their physical bodies and give them access to holy energy to play around with, while also giving them a slightly modified version of the system panel that the sacred gear wielders have. This is as far as I have come in terms of planning. Raffle nodded at my words as he continued browsing through the papers. For hours on end, my siblings and I went through the details and made a somewhat practical plan. However, I knew that no plan survives enemy contact, so I also needed to prepare backup plans for those as well. As for the other pantheons and the tantrums they will definitely throw, I have a plan for that as well. And the perfect target to demonstrate said plan, given what our spies in the underworld have been informing us about in the past few days. Chapter 42. Grigori. Azazel stared speechlessly as the screen in front of him blatantly showed how much he had fucked up throughout his life. Karma value. 500 max. Quote. You really did not have to do me like this, brother Etherian. His words were met with silence as he was the only one in the room right now, as his subordinates were far too busy wrangling the rest of the fallen angels after the latest patch in the heavenly system was pushed through, bringing with it something that he had been dreading and anticipating for some time now. The karma system for all the fallen angels, and by extension, the possibility of being redeemed and brought back into the fold in the heavens. Ever since the patch, the fallen angels had been in an uproar as the messages that came with the system clearly showed what they had to do to rejoin the heavens. For those who had negative karma, they had to do good deeds as well as truly repent for the sins that they had committed, which meant that they must be feeling guilty for the sins in the first place, to regain good karma. While the possibility of rejoining heaven would only be given to those whose karma reaches +400 and above, it was still a possibility that shone like a ray of light in the minds of many fallen who wished to regain their former splendor. That is why there had been an uproar in the Grigori as fallen angels scrambled to go out and do some good deeds to try and game the system, as the kids these days say. Unfortunately, they soon found out that the system had already taken this into account. Just doing some good deeds would not be enough to change their karma value. They must truly wish to repent and must feel guilty for the sins they committed in the past. The system would read their intent and only then calculate their karma value. Leaning back in his seat, Azazel once again brought out a bottle of whiskey and started chugging it. Well played, brother. You made sure that those of us who did not regret their actions in the past would never be given a second chance to go back to heaven. A cold and logical decision, but one that I support wholeheartedly. I knew you would say that. Azazel nearly jumped from his seat at those words before he turned around, finding Etherian casually reclining on his couch. What the hell? How did you arrive without me noticing you? Etherian grinned at Azazel's question. Magic. Very funny, brother. But seriously, how? This place is enchanted to hell and back, in some cases literally, so how did you get past those wards that easily? Etherian continued grinning as he rested his face on his fist. Like I said, magic. Quote. Fine, keep your secrets. Taking out another bottle of whiskey, he pushed a glass full of the stuff towards the angel, who shook his head, making Azazel shrug. So, how did your people find the update? The flat stare that Azazel gave his former brother was all the answer that Etherian needed as he started chuckling. That bad, huh? What do you think? I am guessing, chaos. Try absolute pandemonium. Haha. Makes sense. Still, isn't this what they wanted after all? A chance to return to the kingdom in the sky. Azazel stared wistfully through his window, up at the purple skies of the underworld. Yeah, that is what many of us wish deep down, even to this day. Even after we rebelled, even after we fought and killed those who we once called kin. We still wish to return to what we once had. At least, a majority of us do, anyway. Kokabil. Among others, yes. Azazel did not hide anything and straight away answered his brother truthfully since it was not really a secret. Kokabil had always wanted to restart the Great War since he believed that the fallen angels were the superior race and should have won the war if not for the ceasefire that was abruptly called after the death of God and the four Satans. And he was not the only fallen angel to believe as such. That is why he and his group had always been an annoyance for Azazel, even if Kokabil was someone loyal to his leader and would do as he was ordered, even if it went against his goals. Shaking his head to get rid of those thoughts, Azazel turned to Etherian and smiled wryly. Still, this was a brilliant move, brother. You directly destroyed any chance of anyone abusing the karma system by involving intent in it, making it so that only those who truly wish to do good deeds and repent can gain positive value. This way, you can separate those who are looking to abuse the system and those who truly wish to go back to the way things were rather easily. Etherian nodded his head to those words. Not only that, I have incorporated this intense system into the overall heavenly system, which means that this is how things will work for the sacred gear wielders, the members of the church, and everyone else in the world from now on. That's a good plan. But what are you planning on doing with the devils? You do know that things have been really bad down here for the past few months, right? Etherian smirked at that question. I know, Azazel. That is why I have come here today. Oh. In a few days, the heavens will be meeting with the Satans for a meeting. Supposedly, they want to propose some kind of treaty with us. That caught Azazel's full attention as he put down his bottle of whiskey. For a long time now, Azazel had been making plans to end the stalemate between the three factions and establish a true peace. As someone who had become disillusioned with war and had become tired of it, he had genuinely wanted to end this conflict and finally bury the hatchet, one way or another. To that end, he had made many long-term plans and was even willing to do shady things to achieve his goal. However, with the revival of Ariel, now Etherian, and said angel's subsequent actions, he believed that this dream of his would die an ugly death in the coming days. But now, he caught a glimpse of another chance. So, without any hesitation, he stared seriously at Etherian. I will join. Etherian chuckled at those words. I haven't even invited you yet, Azazel. Acting like this makes you look desperate. I am desperate. Brother. I am tired of all the bloodshed and meaningless loss of life. I want peace. And if I can put down the foundations for such a future through this meeting, so be it. Etherian smiled sadly at Azazel. I do not think it will be that easy, Azazel. Especially with the plans that I am thinking about implementing, which will make us the enemies of countless powerful beings from across the world. Not to mention that I have directly taken away a large chunk of the military force that the devils had until now, with my reforming of the system. Do you still think peace is possible under such circumstances? I will not know unless I try, brother. Besides. Azazel's power swelled as a confident grin made its way to his face. When have I ever been afraid of making enemies? Ha ha ha. Alright, then. I'll send you the invite tomorrow. Suddenly, Etherian's phone rang with a notification, making him look at it with a raised eyebrow before he smiled a bit. How interesting. Congratulate Benamun on my behalf, will you? Azazel gave a confused look at his brother, who teleported out. But his confusion would be soon cleared in a few hours' time when Benamun would return to Grigori with a pep in her step and a smile on her face. Because the system had calculated the genuineness of her good deeds in the past and had recalculated her karma value to be above 100 points, which meant that she could now use a little bit of pure holy energy along with her tainted light, which had a lot of its corruption scrubbed from it by the system, just like a few other fallen angels whose good deeds had been acknowledged by the system. Chapter 43. Kuo Town. Within a rather luxurious fortress made at the edge of the town and concealed with invisibility spells, 3 of the 4 Satans sat in front of the 3 angels while their subordinates stood to the side. Seers X Lucifer, the current ruler of the devils and the strongest devil. Ajuka Beelzebub, the creator of the evil peace system and the only equal of Seers X among the devil kind that they knew of. And finally, Seraphal Leviathan, the Satan in charge of foreign affairs. To the side of the devil stood Graphia Lucifuge, the wife and queen of Seers X Lucifer. On the angel's side was Michael, the prince of heaven's armies. Gabriel, the messenger of God, and Etherian, the current ruler of the angels not by choice, but by necessity, given how Michael basically dumped everything on him and chose to run away from all responsibilities. Of course, as expected, the two sides had varying reactions to each other. On the angel's side, Gabriel was weirdly staring at Seraphal with a hint of hostility in her gaze, something that no one ever expected from her, while said devil was busy staring at Etherian from head to toe with an appraising look. Michael held his signature smile, but was staring sharply at Seers X, who had a wry smile on his own face thanks to the incident that happened the last time these two interacted face to face. Ajuka, on the other hand, was staring at Etherian seriously as he tried to estimate the power of this new angel that he had never heard about. Graphia, too, was staring at the heavily armored angel who could not be bothered with the devils and their actions. As for Etherian, he was busy on his phone, ignoring everything that was going on. Unable to handle the silent clashes in the room anymore, Seers X cleared his throat and spoke up. Shall we get this meeting started? Not yet. There is another person who has yet to arrive. Etherian's words confused the Satans. Is it another angel? Etherian grinned. Technically, yes. but also, no awe. Speak of the devil. A familiar teleportation circle shone on the floor, making the devs tense up as they realized who had come through. Azazel, the scapegoat of God, one of the original fallen angels, and the leader of Grigori. And appearing alongside him was a similarly famous fallen angel. Barakiel, the lighting of God. Seeing the stunned faces on the devil's side, Azazel smirked before taking the empty seat. Sorry about the delay, I had to take care of a few things at my institute. Etherian put away his phone at those words and grinned, knowing that this little scheme of theirs had worked perfectly based on the faces of the devils. Now, let's get this show on the road, yeah. What is he doing here? Seraph's outraged voice expressed what the devils were feeling as a whole, making Azazel and Etherian's smirks widen even more. Azazel quickly put on a hurt expression and looked at Seraph. What? You don't want me to be present when you work your magic? Levitan. Seraph shuddered at the fake honeyed words from the governor of the fallen, making Etherian grin even more, if that was even possible. Please don't speak like that to me. Then, you should not make a fool of yourself on live streams across the supernatural internet through your Magic Girl show. Seriously, do you know how traumatized I was when I first saw your show online? Hey. Everyone loves my show. Seraph, enough. Ajuka's calm words instantly stopped the devil woman from speaking as he turned to look at Etherian. It was you, wasn't it? Who modified the heavenly system into what it is today? Etherian leaned forward with interest and placed his face on his fist. Why do you think that? Ajuka took out a bunch of documents from his storage and placed them on the table. A few months ago, reports started trickling in about a new archangel from heaven who called himself Etherian. At first, it was just rumors from those who accompanied the Barbados clan heir in his personal crusade against Claria Belial. Then, we got confirmation from our sources from the church that it was the truth. Quote. You are being surprisingly candid by talking about your infiltration of the church. Ajuka shrugged at Etherian's words. It is an open secret. One that is no longer worth anything, given how the church has cleaned house and made it impossible to infiltrate it again with the karma system weeding out anyone we could send in as a replacement. Continue. Ajuka took out another document and started going through it. Right after our reports were confirmed about your existence, things suddenly changed with the heavenly system. Putting down the document, he stared seriously at Etherian, but Searsex beat him to the punch as he spoke with a grim tone. Resetting the sacred gears of our peerages. Making Earth a hostile territory for anyone who has evil origins. Giving reincarnated humans the option to go back to being human and then transporting them to Earth through the system if they accept the deal. Suppressing the power of all devils who come to Earth by at least 2 ranks. Using the heavenly system to erect a space-stabilizing barrier across the entire planet, making it really difficult to travel from the underworld, and even the other adjacent realms connected to Earth, to the mortal realm. The karma system. The PvE system. As he continued speaking, Searsex's power started to leak with each word, trying to pressure the angels with his superior power. A move that he had used many times before and had gotten away with. If I did not know better, I would think you were directly targeting the devils and the fallen angels with your actions. By dragging in the name of the fallen angels, Searsex cleverly made this Azazel's problem as well and tried to make the governor join him in trying to suppress the angels and get some concessions and benefits out of them. Unfortunately for the current Lucifer, Azazel was not in the mood as he simply continued playing with his phone, ignoring everything. Seeing this, Etherian grinned and leaned back in his chair. Suddenly, the oppressive and destructive energies in the room that were created by Searsex's power were snuffed out like a candle. What replaced it was a heavy pressure that made the devil's breath hitch. To them, it felt like they were thrown onto the surface of the sun, as the pure holy energy in the air seared their skin as if they were meat on a grill. Etherian still held a lazy smile as he leaned back in his chair with his legs crossed and his face resting on his fist. Yet, his blue eyes were now a solid gold as his pure white wings became tainted with a similar shade of gold divinity as his eyes. To the side, Empyrean stood tall as he too manifested his 10 wings made of pure light while holding his spear, making Graphia stand tall as well, freezing the ground around her with her power. Seeing that standoff, Seraphal and Ajuka prepared to do the usual song and dance that they were familiar with after so many centuries, because this was a routine way of doing things between the 3 factions. Searsex would act like a hothead, using his power to intimidate their opponents, while Seraphal or Ajuka, depending on who was present, would mediate between Seersex and their opponents, allowing them to assert both their power as well as diplomatic power to win what they want from these meetings. However, today, things were bound to go against the script. Sarah Fall could not help but gawk in shock as the ever-gentle Gabriel, who would always remain silently by her brother's side, stood up from her seat before removing her robe. Revealing the gleaming silver armor that she had not worn since the end of the Great War, along with the scepter that was once the symbol of fear for many a devil back in the day. Her 12 wings spread open behind her as her holy energy joined Etherian's within the atmosphere. Before the devils could respond, Michael stood up as well, showing his own armor beneath the robes and the blazing sword whose purple flames were still fresh in the nightmares of many older devils to this day. With the combined power of the 4 angels present, the holy energy had become so strong that it was now actively harming the 3 Satans present. Etherian smirked as he leaned forward, staring straight into Seersex's eyes. You do not know any better. Grimoire. What you said is right. I am suppressing the devils and taking away their military power. And not only your kind, I am targeting every race out there that causes harm to humanity. Ajuka stood up from his seat as his own demonic energy erupted from his body, aiding his friend's power, just as Seraphal did. The reincarnation system is meant solely to help repopulate our kind. Etherian did not even let Ajuka speak anymore before manifesting a large stack of files and throwing them across the table, landing them right in front of Ajuka. Amanal Barbados. Former heir of the Barbados clan. Kidnapped a human girl from Britain because she had a sacred gear, forcefully turning her into a reincarnated devil. He then traded her away when she could not keep up with his other members in the peerage, who were similarly taken from their homes by him. After his death, his peerage members, who had no say in the way their lives were destroyed, were labeled stray devils for wishing to escape the underworld and were killed off before we even learned about what was happening. Altrin Paimon. Heir to the Paimon family. This guy had a peculiar habit of picking up helpless humans from the streets and then turning them into his playthings. Particularly, he targeted teenage boys. After the heavenly system rescued these young men and gave them their humanity back, many of them committed suicide, unable to handle the trauma, while those who still live curse the Paimon name. The same Paimon whose family still serves under your Foreign Affairs Division, Leviathan. Sarah Fall's expression fell as disgust filled her heart while she glanced at the files that Ajuka was seriously studying. Vera Belith. This woman is the heir of the Belith family and loves to target children from the other races, acting as a mother figure for those children who were too young to know what was going on when she has them kidnapped from their families through elaborate schemes. She is cautious enough to never show her face on Earth, but we are waiting for the moment she does, so that we can kill her then and there. Etherian smirked, but his eyes held nothing but pure disgust as he stared at Ajuka, whose shoulders kept falling lower and lower with each word spoken. I believe, Lord Belith works in one of your research institutes, yes. Oh, great Satan Beelzebub. Ignoring the uncomfortable devils, Etherian continued speaking. But the words he spoke next nearly made Ajuka shoot up from his seat in shock. Diodora Astaroth. Heir to the Astaroth family. Your ever-beloved cousin, Beelzebub. He targets girls who are considered holy maidens or priestesses from various pantheons, including the church, and makes elaborate schemes to trap them. Then, he violates them, both in body and mind, before turning them into his slaves. The smirk finally fell away from Etherian's face as he stood up. Suddenly, it felt like the very world felt terrified of what was to come as a strange lance made of pure kaleidoscopic energy manifested in the angel's hand. For the first time in their lives, Seersex and Ajuka felt absolute terror as the weapon felt like an entire world pressing on their very souls, as the strange energies within it felt like they could destroy their very souls right where they stood. Tell me, devils, what am I supposed to do when your kind causes such wanton destruction in the human world? What am I supposed to do when helpless mortals are targeted like this by your filthy kind for their sickening pleasures? Are we supposed to just stand by and let you do as you please? Sarah Fall stuttered as she pulled herself together and tried to speak. That is just the outliers. Out of the 72 pillar families of the underworld, only 32 still live to this day. And out of those 32, there are 23 family heirs in that stack of files I gave you, Leviathan. And this is not even considering the hundreds of pure-blooded devils from minor noble families and extra devil families who have committed similar acts. Tell me, who exactly are the outliers here? Azazel finally put away his phone and sighed loudly, gaining the attention of the devils and angels. Alright, enough of that, brother Ariel I mean Etherian. How about we sit down and talk about this like civilized beings? The deliberate slip of the tongue on Azazel's part was not missed by the devils, who filed that name away to investigate later and felt relief when Etherian put away his lance. With a dramatic sigh, Etherian sat down on his seat, along with his siblings, who gave similarly reluctant looks before sitting down. Internally, Azazel could not help but praise his former siblings for their stellar acting skills, but externally, he held a serious look. Look, nothing comes out of fighting like this. Our three factions are already weakened to a certain extent and cannot afford another war. So, how about we reach a compromise? Azazel spoke lies as easily as breathing, as that was his nature. Out of the three factions of the Abrahamic religion, only the devils were at a distinct disadvantage. Especially now that all the angels of old who were killed had been revived and made immortal, literally. When Azazel first learned of how Etherian had modified the system somehow to help all the angels respawn in the heavens if ever they are killed by keeping a tether of holy energy always connected to their souls, he had felt like he was hearing something extremely alien to the common sense of the world. Then again, it was an idea conceived by his brother Ariel, so there was no surprise that it would be completely unhinged, but would somehow end up working to his favor one way or another. Even the fallen angels, who had suffered the least amount of casualties in the war, not to mention that their fertility rate, which was superior to the devils and could produce new fallen angels without much problems, were superior to the devils these days in both numbers and power. The only thing that the devils had going for them was the reincarnation system and their two so-called super devils. Searzex and his companions did not know this fact, but they still sensed that something was wrong with what Azazel said. However, they were currently not in a position to say no, as their entire script had been flipped on its head. Seraphal, the devil in charge of foreign affairs, finally remembered her original duty and faced Azazel. What do you have in mind? Azazel grinned as he spotted the subtle nod from Etherian. How about we put away all these old grudges and reach an accord that would be beneficial to everyone? Chapter 44. Vatican City. A little girl who was probably 9 or 10 years old stood nervously in front of the huge man wearing the church's robes. Her emerald green eyes stared with curiosity and nervousness as the man with a gentle smile bent down to speak with her, while the nun who ran the church where the girl grew up looked very proud of the girl, even though the older woman felt worried for the girl as well. As someone who had left behind Vatican City a long time ago due to the monsters that called it home in the past, the old nun had never wanted the children under her care to ever be involved with those people. However, now that this little girl had awakened her sacred gear, she simply did not have a choice but to inform the headquarters about. The only silver lining that the old woman could find in this mess was that the church was no longer what it used to be. The huge man, Vasco Strada, the current leader of the church, who had authority just below the heavenly council, made up of angels and the archangel Michael, smiled as he looked at the little girl in front of him. Hello, little one. I am Vasco Strada. Can I have your name? Tuum Asia Arjento. Ho. Argento huh. Strada gave a subtle look towards the old nun, who huffed at his look. It was no surprise that Strada felt intrigued since Argento was the last name of this old nun, so the fact that the little girl was given this last name by the older woman meant that she considered Asia as her own daughter, just like another exorcist under his command who took in a girl of her own as her daughter. Vasco Strada smiled at the nervous girl as he stood up, doing his best to reel in his overwhelming presence that had been steadily growing for a few months now, ever since he had resumed his own training alongside his subordinates. Just like the angels themselves, who had also started to grow in power after their limitations were removed by their oldest kin. Vasco Strada extended his hand to Asia. Come, little Asia. Let me show you around. See, can I ask you something? Of course. Strada stopped and waited with a smile as the nervous girl gathered all her courage and spoke up with determination while clutching the old nun Argento's dress with her tiny hand. "To heard from Father Matthew's tea that I will be staying here from now. See, can Sister Argento come with me? And TTHE puppy as well." Before Strada could say anything, the old nun crouched down in front of Asia and wiped away the tears that were threatening to fall from the little girl's eyes. Asia, you know that I can't abandon my duties. I still have a lot of your siblings to take care of, remember? But. Old nun Argento hugged Asia to comfort her. Don't worry, Asia. I will drop in every other week to see how you are doing. Not to mention that you will also have the freedom to visit me whenever you want, right? Those last words were directed at Strada, who just nodded with a smile. As Sister Argento said, she has her own duties. But I promise you that you will see her whenever you want to see her, little Asia. Also, About the puppy, I assume you are talking about the same one that you healed. Asia nodded shakily at those words, wiping away her tears before looking up at Strata. Very well. Sister Arjento, I will send someone to your branch tomorrow. Can you help them get that puppy? Of course, Cardinal Strata. Still crouching in front of Asia, Sister Argento patted the girl's head as her eyes shone with worry and warmth, as if she really were Asia's mother who was sending her off to school or some faraway location. Now, remember to eat well. Also, try to learn and be assertive. If you continue being as timid as you are now, who knows how many people will take advantage of you. Also, you remember the Tier 2 magic message that I taught you a few days ago, right? Asia nodded her head at those words. For the little girl, this was the only magic that she knew, and she was quite proud of it because she was the only one in her age group who knew magic while also having a sacred gear. Because the church had prohibited the children from learning magic and other fighting methods until they were at least 12 years old. Asia had heard from the adults that these changes had been brought forth by the archangels, who wished for the children to have a good childhood. By the age of 12, the children would be well educated enough that they could choose what direction they want to go in. Whether they want to stay with the church, become a part of it in whatever capacity they want, or venture out and make a life for themselves. That is why they were forbidden from learning these arts. However, Asia's circumstances were completely different, so Sister Argento had no choice but to teach her the message spell from the tier system because of her own fears. As Asia nodded at Sister Argento's words, the old nun spoke seriously. Asia, listen closely. If you are ever in danger or think that you are being bullied, reach out to me with the message spell. I will take you away. Vasco Strata gave a fake cough, which made the old nun glare at the man fearlessly, even though the man could probably kill her without even lifting a finger. So, glaring into Vasco Strata's eyes, Sister Argento repeated her sentence, much to the strongest human's amusement. I will take you away. Do not be afraid of anyone bringing any kind of retribution to us. I still have good reach in the church. So, do not be afraid to call me if you're in trouble. Asia finally could not control herself and burst out crying as she clutched the woman who had raised her from infancy, while even the old woman's eyes grew misty. Once the farewells were done, one of Strata's men guided Asia towards her new accommodations, a place where many of the children from the church lived. Watching her go, Strata turned towards Argento. You do know that this is not the church that you remember, right? Things have been very different for the past year. I know. I was there when you and that kid Dulio spoke about the changes made by the heavens, remember? Then, why are you so afraid? Do you not have faith in the heavens? Argento remained neutral at those words and spoke in a cold tone. The heavens. Cardinal Strata. The same heavens that abandoned our people for so long. The same heavens that stood by and watched as corruption consumed everything that was supposed to be sacred. A slightly broken look appeared on her face. The same heavens that stayed silent as I prayed every day to bring back the children taken from my church, only to find out that they had all been turned into experiments. All for what? To make artificial wielders of holy swords. With a sigh, the old woman turned and walked away as she spoke. I am sorry, Cardinal Strata. But the church that I once believed in is long gone. Even now, with all these changes, I still do not see that radiance in it anymore. In fact, it feels even more oppressive and authoritarian than before. As if whoever is in charge now feels like they alone can guide us on the so-called right path and that they do not trust anyone else to do so. Watching the old woman leave, Strata simply smiled as his eyes shone with a golden light while his whispers remained unheard. You are spot on, Sister Argento. Lord Etherian is indeed someone who believes only he can guide us on the right path. Perhaps, it is because of trauma, or maybe it has to do with something else that nobody knows. However, what he fails to realize is that his brothers and sisters have already noticed how he feels and have taken steps to silently help him and find a way to heal his broken mind. Under his gaze, the old woman got into a car belonging to the church, getting ready to depart back west. But what nobody could see, aside from Strata, was the powerful and invisible guardian angel that followed the old woman around silently, as its gentle and warm eyes only winked at Strata conspiratorially before following the old woman back home. With a chuckle, Strata turned around and started to walk away while he whispered to himself again. It is because you believe in the teachings of the Lord so genuinely that the heavens care for you so much, Sister Argento. Even if you hate the organization and the heavens themselves. I hope you never lose your beliefs, your morality, and your convictions that have won you the recognition of the Lord's children. With those words, Vasco Strata left the area and returned to the main building, getting ready for that day's class with the many teenagers that he needed to train. Author notes. Read 5 chapters ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/Rujard1